right, so you have a new memorial, 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York that is sparking some controversy, and they're raising concerns over a documentary that's going to be shown at the National September 11th Memorial Museum. It opens next month, and they're saying it's offensive to Muslims. The film is called The Rise of Al-Qaeda. It refers to the 9/11 terrorists as Islamists, which they are. It uses the term jihad, which has, quote, panel members worried the film will leave museum visitors with a prejudiced view of Islam, the New York Times reports. Quote, the screening of this film in its present state would greatly offend our local Muslim believers, as well as any foreign Muslim visitor to the museum. According to Sheikh Mustafa Al-Azbawi, he's an imam in Manhattan at a member of an interfaith group, and he wrote a letter to the museum's director. Unsophisticated visitors, in other words, us, the masses, who do not understand the difference between Al-Qaeda and Muslims, may come away with a prejudiced view of Islam. Well, the question here is the museum going to cave to the pressure? And joining us now, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is with us, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Faheem Younus, Baltimore chapter president of a Muslim community, and they're here to discuss this. So, all right, Faheem, what do you think about this? Do you agree with that?
First of all, Sean, I would like to say as a member of Ahmadiyya Muslim community, these are the same terrorists that attacked my community, my family. We have been a victim of the exact same terrorism. So I have absolutely no sympathy for them.
Well, I think the Muslim religion, and I'll even go further than that. I'll say the Muslim religion has been hijacked in many ways by radical Islamists and those that have perverted a religion. And I think the community at large is very intimidated by these radicals, and all too often they don't speak out enough. Do you agree with that?
No, we all are, and as I will mention, Ahmadiyya Muslim community has done nationwide campaigns against it. But the issue really is, it's not the Muslims only who are expressing concerns. It's the Jews, the Christians, the New York Disaster Interfaith Services. A lot of people have concern about that kind of inflammatory language, which requires a much more nuance.
Why does it need nuance?
Believing and associating 1.5 billion Muslims with the acts of a few.
Faheem, are there radical Islamists? Are there people that in the name of Allah think that they're doing God's will when they say Allahu Akbar, and they plow planes into buildings, and they hijack planes, and they kill innocent people? Aren't there radical Islamists? Their numbers are large, and don't they need to be identified for who they are? They're radical Islamists.
You can use the worst word in the dictionary for them. I'll agree with you. All I'm saying is do not associate their actions with Islam, because that's not true.
I didn't say. I said I make a distinction. I'm saying radical Islamists. They are radical Islamists. They're not. I'm not saying they're people practicing the Muslim faith. I'm saying they're radicals.
I agree, but when you say Islamist, we don't use the word Christianist.
They're using their religion. But wait a minute, they're using their religion.
Hitler has a lot of sayings about his Christian beliefs and his Catholic roots, but we don't attribute Hitler's actions to Christianity, God forbid. So therefore, we should have a same standard.
They use their religion as a justification to kill. They think they're doing the will of Allah. They think that Allah is waiting in heaven with 72 virgins. It is a religious-based terrorist philosophy.
I agree,
It is
Sean,
not,
but that's
it is not Islam, it is radical Islam.
In 2011, Anders Breivik, again, is a Christian. There are a lot of people who believed in all kinds of things, but we do not want to go by guilt by association. It's the same thing. We are still portraying every Latino person as a woman, as a maid, every African-American. There is a lot of stereotyping going on.
Maybe you do. I don't do that. Zuhdi, do you do that? I don't.
No.
Anybody that does.
And, I'm sorry, Faheem, as a Muslim, I'll tell you, your behavior and this type of denial is either ignorance of the reality of the movement of political Islam globally, or it's a willful denial. Bottom line is there's violent jihadists like Al-Qaeda, and then there's peaceful Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood that now supposedly condemns terrorism. But the longer we deny the fact that Islamism is a political movement that has a global following of 20 to 30% of global Muslims, and the fact that in Arabic, by the way, in Egypt, that's what what they call themselves. In Arabic, they call themselves Islamiyin. It's an Islamic movement. So you can't deny that Islamism is very different than radical Islam, but yet you can't also deny we need a 12-step program that the gateway drug to the Al-Qaedas of the world is political Islam, which is a huge political movement where 10 million Muslims were in the streets of Egypt last summer protesting the Islamists of the Brotherhood, and they had signs calling them Islamists and jihadists. And the Brotherhood's motto is, jihad is our way. And this is millions upon millions across the world that use that language. And now in America, we're going to deceive Americans and blame Americans for the generalization that Islam is not Islamism. This is our problem, and we need to own up to it and reform the ideas that create political Islam.
Here two Muslims are arguing over the nuances. Can you imagine 300 million Americans, how confused they will be? You and I cannot agree on the term Islamism or Islamist. I believe that is an offensive term. I believe when I get up in the morning for my prayers, that is a jihad. I'm doing an inner struggle at that time. When my children wake up in the middle of the night, that is a jihad for me. So would you call me a jihadist? You know, that is true.
Well, it's not offensive, actually. It's a political term that is an ideology, no different than between communism and socialism. And as long as you continue to go down the path that, well, it's offensive and you're offending me, we can't even get past step one of the 12-step program of reforming against the ideas that are preventing Muslims from getting into modernity. The museum is being very upfront. These are jihadists. That's what they call themselves, just like Hezbollah calls itself Party of God. We're not going to rename it, even though it offends anyone who believes in the God of Abraham. That's what they call themselves. And the longer you continue to be so hypersensitive, it's just like the drug addict who refuses to own up to their problems and say, you know, we as a community need to address that jihad. We need a jihad against jihad and quit the apologetics that prevent the reforms necessary for national security.
No, Zudi, I disagree. I do not think it's hypersensitivity. It's like going to an African American and saying, I can call you by an N-word and you're just being hypersensitive. That's not the point. The point that you, and you know very well, Ahmadiyya Muslim community 100% agrees with the idea that...
Wait a minute. You're comparing those that use the term radical Islamists with those that would use the N-word? Really? You're making that comparison, Faheem?
Well, my
you're
point
making
again
that
is,
you're making that analogy.
Muslims are making that comparison. It's just not me. That's why I said in the beginning.
You're the one that said it. Are you saying that
last year? I'll give you an example. One quick data point. Last year, it was the month of April when Associated Press stopped using the word Islamist. It's not just me. It's a very wide range of people who believe that is offensive.
Groups are anesthetizing America through billions being spent by Qatar in order to suppress free speech, and you are enabling that and allying with them in this propagandist mechanism of preventing the language necessary for us to own up to the issues. And by the way, Faheem, are you then denying that millions upon millions from Jamaat Islamiyya in Pakistan to the Islamists in Egypt call themselves that? The Brotherhood calls themselves the Islamist movement in Arabic. So why should we change their name to protect them?
And you know that I agree with all of those things. Here's the point. We're both doctors. We're both Muslims. We're both Americans. We both believe in separation, church and state. We both have the right diagnosis. There is a tumor in the brain of Islam today. The difference is in our treatment. You're saying radiate the whole body. I'm saying go with a laser. Just go after the tumor. Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is the
tumor is not just the militancy. The tumor is the larger populist belief that Islamic State should take preeminence as a supremacist doctrine against democracy, against modernity, and that the West is evil. These types of things can only be defeated when we own up that Al-Qaeda is but one small pimple on the body of Islamism, which is a much larger threat. And this type of gymnastics where the Islamists prevent museums from documenting what actually caused the death of Americans is going to prevent. Now, 13 years after 9/11, we're still having dialogue that we had in the 90s that needs to stop.
No, I agree, but it's an oversimplification. It's not just language. This inflammatory language is resulting in harm. Go to Arizona shooting of Muslims and Indians. It's even spilling over to the Sikh community in America. Look at the Wisconsin shooting in the Sikh temple. Look at the mosque vandalization. And look at the daily hatred that me and my wife, and sometimes perhaps you,
I guarantee you, if you took
I went to see a patient, and he
Americans'
looked at me
perceptions about Islam would change.
because I'm a brown bearded Muslim.
Perceptions about Islam would change.
Because I'm a brown bearded Muslim. And he said, I don't want not be treated
All
by
right, guys, wait, one at a time. Dr. Jasser.
Targeting Islamists openly is what's actually the bigger problem for American Muslims.
I fully agree with you. As I said, I agree with the diagnosis. I'm from Pakistan. Nobody has seen the violence that Jamaat-e-Islami does more than me. I just disagree with the treatment. I do not believe we can alienate
Jamaat-e-Islami in Pakistan,
million.
which has millions of followers, when America reports on it, they should drop the last part of their name from Islamiyya.
Right, let me ask a broader question here.
Blank, because it's like equal to calling them the N-word.
All right, Dr. Jasser, let me ask a more pointed question here, because it's the silence in the moderate Muslim world to me has been deafening at times, especially in taking on radical Islamists. I find it extremely frustrating, but I think I also believe that there's a level of intimidation, and people are afraid that they're going to be somehow labeled an apostate if they dare to speak out against the radicals, or there'll be some type of repercussions. But you also have the other issue of, the reality of life in a Muslim world, like the life for women in Saudi Arabia under Sharia law, and they can't drive a car, and they can't go out with some male that they're not related to. And in other countries, if women are raped, you need 3 male eyewitnesses to prove rape, the treatment of gays and lesbians, all these things. It seems that the left in America ignore all those things. No?
Absolutely. And there's no doubt that that's the main problem, is that as long as we ignore these things, there is never going to be, Sean, any progress. And I can't get over the fact that groups like the Ahmadiyya, which Faheem is talking about, are persecuted as minorities. And yet when they have the opportunity to get Americans behind their cause, to diagnose the problem not as spiritual Islam, but as political Islam that has laws of Sharia steeped in the 12th and 13th century that kill people that leave the religion, that oppress women, that treat minorities and have blasphemy laws that are oppressive. That's all coming from theological interpretations that we cannot fix unless we say that that's a version of Islam. It may not be our Islam, but unless we own up to the fact that it's a Islam, we are going to continue to prevent the reforms necessary.
Zudi, I agree with you 100%. As I said, I agree with your diagnosis.
So why do you enable the Islamists? Why are you enabling them?
I'm not. That's your characterization. I believe it's very clear. You don't want to alienate 1.5 billion peaceful Muslims. Many of them are suffering. I wrote a piece about it because 100 people of our community, from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, were slaughtered in a day by the same terrorists. But we still stand up for freedom. We still stand up. We have Muslim for Life campaign around the country.
Were they killed by Muslim terrorists?
During the month of September, we raised 10,000 units of blood every year. That's the way to change the narrative.
Faheem, were they killed by Islamists? Were they killed by jihadists? Were they killed by those that kill in the name of Allah, or were they killed by other terrorists?
They were killed by Al-Qaeda terrorists and Taliban. And I believe that is a fair enough characterization, Sean, when I name them by their name. I do not want to empower them by associating my faith with their name.
You obviously are denouncing radicalism, but you have to concur with me that you have to identify those that are hijacking your religion, because their numbers are many. Those that adhere to this are loud and they're growing, and it seems the more moderate Muslims, Zudi Jasser I've known for years, and he's one of a few brave number of people that has his life threatened on a regular basis for saying the things he says.
But I think I agree with that, and I admire much of what Zudi does. But you have to understand what level of courage, justice, character it takes for a community that has been slaughtered by certain people. We have absolutely no gain. I'm not trying to defend them. If you can go out and hunt down these terrorists, do that yesterday. That's not the issue. But it's fairness, Sean. You cannot be unfair. You cannot just go on a bandwagon only because it suits your agenda. I'm not on a vengeance mode here. It's about forgiveness and justice. But
Faheem, you're not. For all of the compliments you're giving, there is no evidence that you understand that the oxygen of this entire movement is not violence. The oxygen of the movement is political Islam, is the Islamic State. And the problem with 9/11 for the Brotherhood was they were very upset with Al-Qaeda globally. They said, you know what, you guys outed our movement. We were working behind the scenes insurgently in Europe and across the world through petrodollars, and they were very upset with Al-Qaeda because the brazen attack of bin Laden upon America outed their goals and now made America pay attention to what they were truly trying to do across the globe. And that's what this museum should show, and you want to prevent that.
All right, we're going to have to end it there. Zudi Jasser, you get the last word. Faheem Younus, thank you so much for being with us as well. We'll continue to follow the controversy, see if the museum capitulates. Won't surprise me.